Welcome back to our Bible study here in Mark chapter 4. And if you've been following along, you'll know that we had looked just the last time, which is a little bit longer ago than normal. We had Vacation Bible School this week, and took me a little bit more time to get to this. But we want to look at another couple parables here in Mark chapter 4. We looked at the sower and the seed and all those issues the last time. And so this time we're moving just a little bit further. You can see there are a few verses we did not cover there, verse 21, 22, 23, and then even 24 and 25 kind of give us maybe a little bit of a cap on the parable. But today I want to focus a little bit on a couple of parables on the kingdom of heaven. And perhaps we need to remember some of these things, especially right now, because it seems like we're focused so much on all the turmoil and everything that's going on, and sometimes we can almost feel like, what's going on with the church? Where's the church at? Is there anything happening? And obviously we know there's been some, but sometimes we just start to feel, maybe the devil just tries to get us to feel a little bit discouraged about it. And so here today we see a couple of parables in Mark chapter 4, 26 through 32 is where we're going to focus today. And you can look at some of those middle verses there. I know we're not covering that largely. Just quickly mention to you, it seems as though part of what he's saying here is I didn't come to make my teachings obscure or hard to understand necessarily, but I do recognize that those who will not hear, this becomes as darkness to them. And so it seemed like he's kind of dealing with some of that in those middle verses there. But let's look at verse 26. He mentions the kingdom of God, and actually that's what he refers to it in the way he refers to it in verse 30 as well, where he says the kingdom of God. And so he's saying this, first of all, is the kingdom of God is like a man who sows seed into the ground. Well, we just talked about seed the last time. So what's different about this one? Well, in this case, it's actually illustrating how God's kingdom is still going forward. So let's look at what he says. He casts seed into the ground, and then he goes to sleep. And verse 27, should sleep and rise night and day, and the seed should spring and grow up. He knoweth not how. For the earth bringeth forth fruit of herself, first the blade, then the ear, after that the full corn in the ear. But when the fruit is brought forth, immediately he putteth in the sickle, because the harvest is come. Now, again, he's referring to the kingdom of God. And so this seed seems to be that he's saying that the seed of the gospel, as the gospel goes forth, you don't always see what's happening. And sometimes that ought to be a real encouragement to us, because we can feel so discouraged because it seems like, well, I planted the seed. Why hasn't anything happened? But in reality, you don't know what's happening. And I don't know what's happening. And so we just got to keep on planting seed and keep expecting God to do what we can't do. And it says that it's growing up. You don't even know how. But little by little, there are things happening. First the blade, then the ear, and then the full corn. And so it's the idea there is that little by little, in ways that you don't even see happening, there's progress being made. And obviously, we recognize each person has a choice of their own. And we recognize that different areas may have different seasons of their own. And that's one important thing to remember. Don't forget that even a church has seasons. I think maybe former pastor and our conference leader has made that point before, that there are things happening in various places. It may not be happening where you're at right now, and there may be seasons. Maybe it's a time for healing, and not necessarily a time for huge numbers to come in. So there are seasons that way also. I don't want to get too distracted by that, but it's important to remember. But all through, even if maybe right now I'm going through a downtime or a lull, things don't seem to be happening very much, I guess I'll just have to be patient, and there's probably things that are growing right now that I don't even realize. And then also rejoice, because there may be other people that are going through the harvest time right now. And so anyway, just don't forget, he's saying the kingdom of God is still moving. It's still working. God is still doing great things. even when sometimes it seems like it's all hidden and we don't see it happening like we'd like to. Maybe it doesn't seem like it's happening wherever I am, but there is the kingdom of God still going forth. So that's the first analogy. The second one he uses is the comparison of the mustard seed. When it's sown in the earth, it's less than all the seeds that be in the earth. And when it is sown, it groweth up and becometh greater than all herbs, and shooteth out great branches, so that the fowls of the air may lodge under the shadow of it. Another one that I want to notice with you, not only is sometimes it's secret, but sometimes it starts small. And you may not even realize that some little seed sown ends up bringing forth more, an abundant harvest, I guess you would say, because God is in it. And don't forget that little message. Little is much when God is in it, and that is an important message. And may God help us to remember that. But even as a simple little seed sown, I know sometimes we talk about it. Just had a conversation this week about how maybe there was good intention, and then you kind of wonder, well, maybe this wasn't really appreciated very much. Maybe I was off, in my effort or whatever. But in reality, sometimes we may not even realize what a little gesture, a little seed sown, may bring forth an abundant harvest. And one other thing I'd like to encourage you, some of you may be even involved in church work of various sort, maybe those of you from our own church, when we sometimes feel discouraged, whether it's with the children's ministry or some outreach project that we've tried. When we sometimes feel discouraged, don't forget that God is still taking those seeds, and even that insignificant child, obviously there's none like that, but you understand what I mean, where you thought, well, my efforts were wasted on that one, or it just doesn't seem like they're making any progress. Maybe they've even moved away now, and I just I don't feel like I ever had a harvest there. Just don't necessarily count that off before God does, because it may be that He actually is saying, well, it might have been a mustard seed, but I'm gonna bring forth a good harvest, and to where it grows up. It mentions here becoming greater than all the herbs, and has great branches and all those things. Kind of would give the idea. In fact, as it mentions, the fowls of the air can lodge under the shadow of it. It kind of would give the idea that I would like to leave with you today is that you never know that one that you thought you wasted your time on may be the very one that God uses for multiplied blessings in other people. And so don't give up. God's kingdom may be secretly working, and it may start small, but thank God it can have a wonderful, wonderful result in the end. And so maybe a little bit of I don't know if you call it a pep talk, but maybe a little bit of a pep talk today. Let's keep pushing for the kingdom, because God sees every deed we do, every seed we sow, every bit of patience we've had to try to muster, whatever it may be. God sees it all. And really, I believe that sometimes what we thought was a wasted effort, God may reward abundantly someday in heaven. And so keep pressing on, keep doing what God would have you to do, and let's build the kingdom together.